I'm Leela Singh, your podcast host, and I'd like to welcome you to the My Brand HQ podcast, all things personal branding for career acceleration. This podcast is for talented, ambitious career professionals like you who are wanting to be perceived as a thought leader, to be top of mind to those that matter, and to make an impact and stand out, be that in your team, your organization, or your industry, and to be inspired by other successful leaders. I will be interviewing high-achieving career professionals who have carved out a successful career in their field and are open to sharing their career journey, their challenges, their learnings and insights with you, someone who is looking to establish your personal brand and accelerate your career. Through my personal branding and coaching practice, I enable career professionals primarily in the technology industry to earn more money, to increase their salary. In fact, I spoke to all of my past clients that I've worked with over several years and learned that actually overall, they've received an average of 47% increase in their package. Would that be a great place to be? They've also all achieved at least one, if not more, promotions or moved on to a higher level in their career at another organization. And they're looking to advance their career while showing up as the best version of themselves. If this sounds like you, then do reach out to me and let's have a chat. And why do I do this? Well, during my corporate career spanning 25 years, I quickly realized that hard work alone was not enough to get me to where I wanted to be and the success that I strive for. And my belief is that hard work, coupled with creating and establishing a strong personal brand, can both influence and accelerate your career and get you to where you want to be. In today's episode, I'm going to be speaking to Thomas Lee. Thomas is the General Manager at Oracle for Linux and Virtualization for the Japan Asia Pacific region. He has been leading the Oracle Linux and Virtualization business in the APJ region since 2017 and is based in Singapore, reporting into the US headquarters. Together with his team, Thomas's goal is to help customers in their journey to digital transformation and automation, hybrid IT, DevOps, security, and multi-cloud strategies with their Oracle Open Cloud infrastructure portfolio. Thomas is a seasoned and international professional with 25 years of experience across the IT industry, software, hardware, and services, working for both startup companies and large IT corporations in both Europe and in Asia. For the past 10 years, he has held multiple executive roles, both at Hewlett-Packard and Oracle in the APAC region. And prior to that, he worked for 15 years in the EMEA region. He holds a bachelor's degree in international business from a French business school, and he also graduated from executive management program at INSEAD. In today's episode, Thomas will be sharing what creates a winning culture and the importance of raising the bar, his strategies for becoming a great versus a good leader, and the one thing that you must communicate to your team, how diversity in the workplace is essential for success in business and in tech, how your dreams directly influence a winning mindset and free you of limitations. And finally, what to consider when working across cultures to enable integration and inclusion. Let's head over and hear what Thomas has to say. Thomas, hello there and welcome to My Brand HQ. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here on the podcast today. How are you doing?
I'm very good, Leela, and thanks for having me today, and very excited to share some of the insight.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. So let's go straight into this and tell me a little bit about your career. So looking back on your earlier career, what led you into the world of tech, do you think? What was it that brought you there?
It's a very good question. So I always had, Leela, I always had the passion for three things: winning, learning, and numbers. In my younger age, I had three passions: sports, history, and finance. Let's talk about sports. I always wanted to be a sports professional. I practiced many sports. I actually wanted to be a tennis man. And sports, if I think about sports develop my highly competitive character and personality and my winning spirit. Then I got a passion for history and geopolitics. and reading books developed my sense of curiosity. Then when I did my business school, I was very interested into finance and numbers. I was actually going to embrace a career in the finance industry, probably as one of the traders. The reality is I accidentally fell into the tech 25 years ago. And quite honestly, that's the best thing that happened to me. In the end, I first joined a small startup company in France, and then followed by joining the IT corporate world, both HP and Oracle. And honestly, what I really love in the tech industry, I love the innovation side of the tech. But what I love the most is really the speed. I think this is really unique and it's absolutely energizing.
Wow, and it's great. It's great that actually, because sometimes you hear some people have this like vision of where they want to head on to, and then it doesn't happen. You go off on a different tangent, and actually they think it's a bad thing. But I love the fact that you open to embrace what actually showed up for you, and you ended up feeling it's the best thing that ever happened. So that's phenomenal. And I know, you've got a solid career in tech. It's incredible to look at what you've accomplished in the years that you've been there. So tell me, how would you say the tech industry has evolved over your career? What have you seen?
So every industry has been disrupted or will be disrupted. We've seen that, we all have many examples across the board. And this is happening as well in the tech industry too. Right? What changed is really the speed of the change. Tech is known for innovation. Well, we've seen a huge acceleration of innovation. And this acceleration is simply phenomenal. It's interesting, and I'm sure you would agree, Lita, that just even 10 years back, some of the well-established brands in the tech industry were pretty, running their business as usual, continue to grow the business, expanding. But today, any company, startup company can actually disrupt the business. That applies to hardware, that applies to software, and of course, that applies to services as well.
Yeah, definitely. And what about the people then in the industry? How would you say this has impacted the mentality of people who are coming into the industry to work now, who are embarking on their careers? Is there a change there?
So Lila, are you referring to the younger folks or the younger generation?
The younger generations, yes. 2 or 3 generations behind us, I think.
So let's talk a minute about the Gen Y or Gen Z now. My assessment is they are very smart. They are fast, they are decisive, and they are pragmatic. At the same time, I think we would all acknowledge that they live in a world which is full of uncertainty, with poor visibility. In my generation, you can embrace a career, join a large corporation, and sort of build a career for the next 2 or 3 decades. Sort of the Japanese, trend of building career and capacity. Right? So I would, in my view, and I had the opportunity, and I think it's a great chance for myself because there's a lot of positiveness, engaging with the young generation because, like I said, they are smart, fast, decisive, and pragmatic. One of the things that I would really encourage the younger generation as they build their career, as they think about their future career, is probably to follow a non-linear career and expose themselves to a wide range of diverse roles, diverse industries, and probably in many different diverse countries. More importantly, I would continue and encourage them to learn, and learn again.
Yeah. And again, to the point we just said, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we're encouraged to, and a lot of people found themselves going down one career path and staying in that industry, let's say, or that kind of role for the next 20 or 30 years. I've not had a career like that. Mine has been quite diverse in terms of both industry, although albeit I was in tech for the last 16, but the roles as well that I've had are quite diverse. And for me, there was a time when I thought, oh, is this a bad thing? Would this be frowned upon? Whereas actually now I see the benefits of having brought together so much different experience, different learnings, again, to your point, of different types of roles, very, very diverse roles. And I always feel there's a huge benefit to that. You've got a let's say, just broader knowledge, I guess, in terms of the different aspects of business, right? So yeah, I love that advice, and very pertinent, I think, now for the next generations coming up. So tell me, what do you feel creates a winning culture in the workplace, in your experience?
So like I said, Lida, I love winning. This is part of my DNA. Sports was a great enabler for myself. The culture, a winning culture for myself, is a culture that celebrates virtue. It's a culture that sets the stage for positive attitude. It's a culture that sets high expectation. It's a culture with, of course, successful performance. It's also a culture where you focus on results and you drive accountability. I come from a background where my previous boss used to tell me, you have to say what you do, you have to do what you say. You have to say what you do, you have to do what you say. And I've kept that for the past 25 years. Other elements, of course, is really to learn from the past. That really feeds the winning culture. Aligning with your core values is something very, very important. Having shared value contributes to building that winning culture. Communication, open transparency is something also that, is probably the fuel engine of a winning culture. Work as a team, develop collaboration. The other important aspect probably is it has to be a dynamic culture, not a static view. Things are moving fast, like we said, especially as you have to manage diversity and also the millennials. Lastly, you've got to have fun. You have to celebrate. There's a time for hard work and there's time for celebration. For me, my key takeaway of the winning culture of what I've learned over the last 15, 16 years, managing multiple different businesses, multiple peoples, probably fall into 4 or 5 key points. One, hiring great and smart people. I would actually say hiring smarter people than yourself and people that will complement you. Number 2, building a winning culture, I've realized, is not about having only top performers across the board. But what's important is about your ability to identify and leverage some of your key team members who will be your best ambassadors to drive that winning culture. So you see, Lida, that's really about managing by influence. The third aspect is really to maintain that united front approach. Leading by example is something which remains. I've heard many times that, this word run into the fire, which is a kind of warrior expression. But the general cannot tell his team, his army, go and run into the fire. You run into the fire first, then your team will follow. That's the way it should work. Lastly, I'm a big fan of really managing expectation upwards, but also challenging people. And what I like doing is really about raising the bar. So I had the opportunity to manage, great people, great reps, high performers. You don't want to raise the bar here with them. You want to raise the bar here with them. You want them to go, to the next level. They have huge potential. They have huge capacity. They can do even better, right? You want to send them into the moon. That's really what you want to do.
I love that. I love that what you said about raising the bar and challenging, because I was always challenged
particularly in my sales role. And sometimes I'm like, why are you always pushing and pushing and pushing me? But then as I got pushed, I recognized the value of that and I really did appreciate it. So that's a really important one. And, you know, talking about having a united front, having, you know, we're all in this together. It's almost a case of, as a good leader, don't ask people to do what you wouldn't do yourself, right? That's kind of a natural leadership trait. And you said about hiring people smarter than you. And I think sometimes you'll have people who feel maybe insecure having people around them that are smarter than them. And I think it's about having the confidence in yourself, but also recognizing the benefits of having people smarter than you, because you don't have to know everything. You want people around you who can support you with aspects that perhaps aren't your biggest strength. So that's a huge thing as well. I love that. Great. So, and you mentioned diversity there briefly. So let's just go on to that for a second. So how do you feel we could instill greater diversity in the workplace, and in a result of that, creating an inclusive environment?
Thanks for asking, Lila. I think that's a great question. As we just celebrate, by the way, the International Women's Day just a week ago. Diversity is a must. Diversity is just a must. It's a must from a business standpoint. You, as a leader, you want to build the best team to win. You want to attract the best talents. Why do you want to prevent yourself from removing 50% of the female gender, or removing some of the, you know, smarter Gen X, Gen Y? Why do you think that building a winning culture, a winning team is just about having, you know, very extrovert people? There are people, there are sales teams that will fit very well with some personas, some customers, being introvert, being more analytical, right? There's a place for everyone. So from a business standpoint, there's no doubt. There's no option, Lina. We all need to embrace diversity. Now, the second thing I would tell you, Lila, to me, what's the most important is really about to walk the talk. Walk the talk, right? And it's an end-to-end process. So probably I'll share with you a few examples, Lila, today. For me, it goes from hiring to giving more responsibility. It's really about empowering people. Let's take, for instance, hiring. The rule, the guidance that apply to myself, to my teams, to my management team is at equal skill set, hard skill, credential, soft skills, is to promote diversity. It's a very simple rule. So every time I hire, that's the rule that I apply. The second thing that I really like doing is, especially in the corporate environment, Lila, I'm sure you remember those times. You have a lot of those project assignment. I think it's a great opportunity really to empower one of the team members, right? Someone that have strong appetite, wants to go the extra mile. And it's, you know, you feel they have that energy level, they are so enthusiastic. And it's something that goes beyond just, you know, meeting your targets. It's for the sake and the health of the company. It's really to progress the company, improve. Sometimes it's processes, sometimes it's organization, sometimes it's about growth opportunity. So I'd like to give project assignment to sort of top talents, but also diversity. Let me share another example that I practice every day. So I'd like to change the way, the order we do meetings in a corporate environment. I'm sure you remember, Lila, that typically you go in any meeting in a corporate world. Let's say you have 20 people, and typically the sequence that we follow is we would ask the most senior person to start talking, and then one by one. What I like to do is to flip the way we do meetings, because sometimes it's very energizing, it's very fresh, and so I usually start with the younger folks from the meeting room to ask for their advice, their input, their feedback. By doing that, sometimes you it's really interesting and it's quite captivating because you've got really fresh idea, you reset the clock, the way you look at things, and sometimes you just reproduce, the old model. Now, the question you need to ask yourself is the old model working in a new world? That's the question you need to ask yourself. For instance, I'm sure you recall that we do quite a number of QBR in our businesses, which is very healthy for the business. Now, in most QBR, we tend to look at what happened in the past. Now, quite frankly, how much can we impact the past? But what can you impact in the future? Right? So what's interesting is not just to look at backwards, but to look forward. What's interesting is not just applying the old model, but looking at potentially some new ideas, coming from diversity. Lastly, Lila, I felt it's very, very important to have a balanced team. Like I just shared with you, especially when you deal with customers, you deal with partners, you deal with your employees, potentially shareholders. There's no one size fits all. One particular customer would be particularly appreciative to have this kind of sales rep, personality-wise connection will work well. In some other case, you need a different personality, right? So I guess it's all about adapt. But clearly, like I said, diversity, there's no doubt, it's a must. If you want to win the game, you have to embrace diversity.
Thank you. There's some great shares there. And, I think you're really opening people's eyes to approaches to ways of doing this. And I recognize also from your career and experience in different cultures that you can bring that to the fore because you've got a broad experience of the different cultures and how you can influence them. So thank you for sharing that. It's really, really good information. And on the back of that then, how would you say the role of the manager has changed? Because you've talked there about how we need to evolve and you use the example of the QBR. So, and also with meetings as well, which is something that's not commonplace to just, as you said, flip it the other way and, invite input from, let's say, people who are more junior, who are younger in the room, as opposed to the people who are more senior, more experienced. So how does that sort of evolve into the role of a manager, and how has that changed? Do you think what needs to change?
So in my opinion, what I observed over the last few years, and I think there's been an acceleration with COVID-19 over the last 1 year, there's probably four areas that I think are evolving, not necessarily changing, but evolving. One, the importance of soft skills for any managers. Right? Just because the world has evolved, the world has changed, the expectations are different. Certainly the expectation from the Gen Z, Gen Y is different. So soft skills, I think, is one of the critical success factors for any manager. The second thing is really this whole thing around engaging. And engaging is not about sending another 50 emails, but it's engaging with people. The third area, I think what's changing as well is in the past, especially in a corporate environment, things typically comes pretty much top down. So you send emails, you explain, you re-explain with your team. I think we move in a new era now where you have to sell your ideas. You have to convince your team. So it's not about telling, it's about selling. It's about convincing your team. The fourth area, which I thought was something, as I reflect about COVID-19 for the last 12 months, is something that I reflected on myself. I believe that pursuing a non-binary approach when it comes to problem solving has become super important. Just because I'm sure Lila, yourself, myself, anyone else watching this, if I would have told you a year ago that pandemic would last forever, I think, nobody could believe it. So don't take things for granted. The old recipe doesn't necessarily apply. I think we have to be super creative, challenge ourselves, challenge our mindset, look at things from a different perspective. These are probably the 4 areas, the 4 categories, Lida, where I see some evolution that actually impacts or affects, the skill set for the new sort of manager generation.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. I absolutely agree. When you talk about the soft skills and also the more engagement with people, definitely in my experience, and also just hearing a lot of what's happening in the workplace, particularly with the impact of a pandemic. We need to demonstrate more empathy, compassion, listening to people, asking how people are, but from a place of sincerity and genuinely wanting to know, because people need that connection. They need to feel cared for, included, especially if they're working remotely right now. We don't have necessarily what we had before of that office environment, that community within the office where you had the day-to-day banter. So you want to still be feeling inclusive. So soft skills, definitely engaging people, selling ideas, influencing. I love that as well. I always say there's a quote that I reference regularly from Zig Ziglar, renowned sales coach, where he says that, I'm not going to quote this word for word, I'll paraphrase, but if the business you're in requires you to deal with people, then you, my friend, are in sales. In other words, we're always influencing, we're always looking to have buy-in from people from the time that we're born, and you're crying, you're giggling, whatever you're doing to get that attention, we're doing it through our adult life. And it's important, particularly in a leadership role or manager role, to recognize that we're constantly looking to create buy-in from people rather than just telling, because when you tell someone, that normally pushes people away. It's a natural reaction as opposed to the influencing style. Thank you for that. So moving on from that then, what would you say, having been there, what is it critical to think about, to consider when transitioning from an individual contributor role to a manager role, or ultimately to a general manager role, which you're in? What are the most important things to think about?
Yeah, so thanks for asking. I would probably say, number one, there's what I would call the baseline, the foundation, right? The foundation for me is, show result, drive success consistently, go the extra mile, be a great team player, express your appetite, express your hungriness, your career aspiration. So many times I've met great individuals. The only thing is they don't express themselves. Right? So I have to guess who you want to be, what do you aspire to be. So I think that's the foundation. That's number one. The second thing, which is really important in a corporate environment in particular, is really to find a good mentor, a good coach, and a good sponsor. These are the people that will guide you. These are the people that will share your names with when there will be other opportunities, right? So that's something equally important, especially as you want to continue to climb the ladder. Finding good coach, good mentor, somebody that will tell you which highway, which road you need to take, will really help you gain time, but also gain in terms of efficiency to achieve your career goal.
Yeah, I like what you say there. I think when you talk about expressing yourself and talking about your career aspirations, not opportunities, but what you actually want, because sometimes people feel that they assume that people will just know what they want rather than expressing it. And then you potentially run the risk of losing out on those opportunities. So it's important to vocalize, to make people aware of what it is you really want before those assumptions are made. And absolutely agree with the mentor and coach aspect you brought in there. Sorry, you were going to say something.
Yeah, one last point that I wanted to mention, of course, is you got to make sure you have high visibility. So you're going to have to develop your own visibility, be a great communicator, but making sure that you're visible. And sometimes people are visible amongst their peers, which is great. But you got to make sure you are visible amongst the management team.
Yeah.
Because they are the one who will select the next one.
Yeah. Thank you for that, because that leads me right back to what it is I do, and what it's all about is your personal brand. And it's about making yourself visible, being top of mind for those that matter, the decision makers, and being remembered for the right reasons. And that's exactly, you just nailed that, because I think I've been there. I've been the one who didn't recognize that, who didn't think about that for a number of years, that actually, depending on where you want to go with your career, what your aspirations are, by, in my case, keeping my head down and working hard wasn't going to get me there, because you won't be top of mind. There's so many other people around that will be. So if it's important to you that you want to move up, you want to ensure that you are making yourself visible for the people that matter, the people that are the decision makers, the hirers, the people who are making decisions about your year-end bonus, the pay rises. You want to be top of mind. And that's where your branding comes in, and the way that you show up. Doesn't have to be that you're louder than everyone else. It's just a case of having that presence, that when you do communicate, people want to listen, that you're heard. So absolutely love that. Thank you. And when we talk about mindset, which again for me is a big part of your brand, you've obviously talked about your sports background and your passion for sports, which requires a mindset for winning. So what would you say it takes? What does it take to nurture a winning mindset?
Like I said, Lila, so sport was my DNA. Winning was really my DNA. I just hate that feeling of losing. Or so I keep telling my team that this refuse to lose. It's just it's impossible. Probably four things, Lila, that would come top of my mind. One, set big goals. Set big goals. I'll give you one example. Usually when you are working in the tech, working for a corporate environment, same applies, I'm assuming, into the startup company. You pretty much have, one target, two targets. And of course, the more you climb, the more you have, different KPIs. Typically, your target will be your budget, your quota, your revenue, top line, your bottom line. So I'll give you one example. Setting big goals for me is, for instance, I was assigned to hit a revenue number and a margin number, which I hit. And I was very satisfied about that. Now, the market itself has different dynamics. And I realized that hitting the revenue, hitting the margin I accomplish my goals. But my goals is also to grow the business for the company. So it's also market share. So if I'm growing not as fast as the other, I'm not doing my job. I'll give you another example. As a sales rep, I have many of the situation. We want some really big, nice references, nice big logos. That's great. But if at the same time, my number one competitor is winning 2 times more of those big logos, I'm not doing a good job. So set big goals is number one. Number two, I'm a firm believer, and trust me, I'm part of those people. Dream is good. Dreaming is great. I encourage everyone to have big dreams. And I have like that very candid personality of the kids. Right? They don't have any limits. You need to have big dreams. You need to continue to dream. That will drive you very high. The third thing that I like is I've met many individuals. They have, they are inspired. They have models in their life. Right? It could be, whatever. It could be someone that is into adventure, someone that is into sports, someone that is into religion, someone into politics, a writer, a poet, a dancer. I think it's just great. It gives you inspiration. Right? It gives you great stimulation when you wake up in the morning, right? Because you have someone that you want to copy or right. The four things that is for myself is to try to avoid toxic environments. I want to keep my mind positive, fresh, looking in the right direction, right? And I think that also helps you to kind of stay very focused, to stay energized, and to nurture that winning mindset. You go into a meeting, you go into a party, and you don't know why. You don't know why. But people attract people, right? People attract people. It's the same concept apply in a company, company that you work for. So you want to be with the people that will lead you. You want to be with the people that will nurture your positive mindset. You want to be with the people that are not just defensive or negative, or you want to be part of the right group, right? The people that will drive my motivation even higher, right? And I apply it to myself as well, right? Regardless of the challenge, my personal challenge or business challenge that I'm facing, how do I make sure that when I engage with people, with my team, with my customer partners, they don't want to hear about my problems, right? They want to hear about the positive. Right? They want to hear about what I can do for them. So there's no, in my opinion, I don't think there's any, secret recipe to address that. I think it's also a question of soft skills. It's your pure appreciation. But I think it's important to keep that, positive mindset and stay on the right dynamic. And like I said, to continue to nurture that winning spirit and that winning DNA, and continue to elevate yourself.
Yeah, totally. And I agree with you. We attract people into our lives for a reason, and in any situation. And I think what I hear from what you've explained there is choices. We have choices. So when we recognize a situation isn't healthy or isn't working for us, or it doesn't align with our values, we then have a choice. What do we do with that? And also, you talked about kind of both setting big goals, but also dreaming, having big dreams, because dreaming creates those limitless ideas, opportunities, possibilities, what is possible. And I love that, because I think there's so much positive energy around that, and people are scared sometimes to do that. And a big part of that, I feel, is the fear of, firstly, what other people will say or think, the judgment, and also potential failure. And in some cases, success. Well, what will happen if I actually succeed? And there's a fear that can come up there as well. I come from a place of, set big goals, have those dreams, imagine what are the possibilities, because the bigger and further out they are, the further up you will go. You won't, and I've talked a lot about this in when I share my story from my career, is by trying things that that were completely new to me, they're completely outside of my comfort zone, had me realize what I was capable of. And if I hadn't done that, I would never know. And for me, that's a huge thing. So for people who maybe aren't happy where they are right now, are feeling frustrated, feeling stuck, and knowing there's something more, which is where I was at several years ago, it's really start to explore that. I invite you to do that and think about, okay, so what is it I really want? What am I imagining I could be? And then start to head towards that, to take those risks, just try new things. And as Thomas, as what you said, is reach out and ask people for help. Have a mentor, have a coach, have some people around you who are your supporters and your advocates, because again, that makes a huge difference as well. Really, really powerful. And you talked, Thomas, about, you know, we talked about the winning culture, the mindset, and what is critical to consider when transitioning from individual contributor to manager. So tell me, when we look at a leader, what makes a great leader versus a good leader, in your opinion?
People have access to Wikipedia, so I think we all know what are the, you know, intelligence, charismatic, you know, be a good strategic thinker, you know, be creative, ability to lead people. Now, in my opinion, I kind of identify 4 or 5 areas which I feel, you know, really makes a great leader. And I had the opportunity in my career to meet a few of those great leaders. It's very much about soft skills, soft skills, soft skills. But number one, there's only a few leaders that have that ability to give you a common purpose. To echo one of my favorite TED Talk speaker, Mr. Simon Sinek, is the ability to answer the why. Many organizations, many business units, many teams can describe the what and the how. Only a few can describe the why. The why is something much bigger than the what. It's something that goes beyond just achieving a top line or bottom line revenue. And I'm sure, Lila, you have many, many examples in mind. Probably top of mind, you know, people would probably wonder why hundreds and thousands of people showed up that day on a Sunday morning, so cold in Washington, D.C., to listen to this gentleman by the name of Martin Luther King. So that's number one. Number two, I believe I alluded to it in our earlier discussion. I associate leadership, great leadership, to courage and risk taker. You just mentioned, Lila, about the importance of failing, failing, failing. 100% agree with you. So you have to step up. You have to step up for your people. You have to step up for your customers. You have to step up for your partners. You've got to take some risk. You've got to take some risk. Risk is positive. Major risk, but you've got to take some risk. I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I totally agree.
The third dimension is really about, so I'm not going to cover everything, but I think it's all about the soft skills, right? You want to have something, you want to work for someone that is, you know, empathic. You want to work for someone that is authentic. Authentic. Why authentic? Well, how many leaders, Lida, have you met at the highest level who would tell you, I made a mistake? I made a mistake. I acknowledge I make mistakes. Just this, I think, is a great testimonial about you know, sort of your humbleness and your authenticity. The other aspect is, you know, give more than you take. Be a great giver. And be a great giver is, let's just start by something simple. Feedback. How many times did you have the opportunity to meet a leader that give you feedback, personal feedback? It's a luxury. It's a blessing. Right? Especially when it's customized, personalized. It's his time. It's, you know, full of lots of experience and care about others. When was the last time that you met someone at the highest level that just came to you and say, Lila, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for what you did. I want to say thank you for what you do every day, for myself, for my team, for this company. Now, the last topic probably, which is my favorite topic, is hiring skills. And again, this is my humble opinion. You have two options when you go into hiring, especially in a corporate environment. I would call them to hire the silver spoons or hire the scrappers. The silver spoons, as you understand, have great credentials. They have a perfect resume. They're coming all from the best schools. They have a traditional, career path, consulting organization. It could be McKinsey, BCG, moving into finance, moving into the corporate world. They are the silver spoon. They're good. Now, at the same time, we have the scrappers. The scrappers, typically, they don't have the perfect resume. They had accidents, personal issues. They are the scrappers. Now, if we think about the 21st century, if we think about this world full of uncertainty, which skill is the most important to win the game in 21st century? What level of agility will we need for our future leaders? There's no right and wrong answer. But I think it's fair to say it's important to reflect and ask yourself, do we only want to hire the silver spoons? Or do we need the scrappers?
Yeah, and that comes back to your point, actually, of having a diverse team when you're hiring, who do you want around you, and also recognizing you want to hire people both that know more than you in some aspects, but also people who bring something else to the table. So it's looking at not just let's say your education and you've worked for the top 4 or what a big 4, whatever it might be, but actually what other aspects of knowledge, of experience that's diverse can people bring. I like that. And some great points there that you've shared. The why, I absolutely agree with you there. And my experience, we had when I was in sales, we had a team that supported us, and oftentimes they were just told to do their tasks, to carry out their tasks. But when it came to the crunch, as you know, at a month end or a quarter end, and you need to get things done, they didn't have the incentive, the motivation to support us because they didn't understand the why. And for me, I would regularly, with my team, either go out to, because these were in Budapest or Poland, go out there and actually deliver some kind of an overview, a bit of training around how they fit into the big picture. And the big picture is because we report a number to the analysts every quarter that we have to hit this target. That's kind of where it starts, right? And then you work back. So these are all the things that need to happen to make sure that we can go back to the analysts to say that we've met that number. And you play a huge part in that, because we then have to do all these other things, and I take them through the steps, and like my responsibility, some of the other people's responsibilities, but then this is what part you're playing in it. It gives them that recognition of the importance of what they're doing, so they feel valued, which means that they're more likely to play ball. So when it does come to the quarter ends, you're not having to beg them to get something done or to stay back for a couple of hours. They'll just do it because they recognize it's important for the business, the why, but also for them, because they feel more valued, they feel a part of it, and they want to be a part of it. And that for me was huge. So I absolutely agree with you on that point. And also, you talk about stepping up for others, taking those risks. Yeah.
Interesting. Just fresh. I mean, just a couple of hours ago, one of my rep called me and say, "Oh, My customer just called me. This is the situation. What do I need to do? I say, well, you are supposed to tell me what do we need to do, right? Because you are the closest to your customer. You have the relationship with him. You're full of experience. You tell me what to do, and then I'll support you, right? So
yeah, and it's a giving them, it's empowering them, as you mentioned, isn't it? It's you make the decisions, I'll support you in your decisions. And yes, we might make mistakes, but we learn that those mistakes, or the learnings rather from those mistakes, can be huge and invaluable, in fact. And just moving on a bit, I want to talk about the cross-cultural map, something that I know you've referred to when we've spoken previously. You've worked in both the Western and the Eastern cultures. So can you share a little bit about what you experience as the core differences, as well as the biggest challenges that you have experienced?
Sure. So I myself am a Eurasian. My dad was Korean. My mom was French, born in Paris. And I had the opportunity and the privilege to travel the world, and now living in Asia for the past 10 years. So I think that's inside me. I realized that part of my learning on the ground, on the field, and part of my learning by the books or traveling, cultures are different across the world. And there was one of my fascinating class from one of my business school in Seattle, where we went through that cross-cultural map. So at the end of the day, there are core differences. I don't think that you need to change yourself. You have to stay who you are, but you have to be aware, right? That's the nuance. Stay who you are, but be aware, because this will give you the opportunity to manage by influence. So what are the key traits of this cross-cultural map? Well, one is really about this concept of high context society or low context society. So typically high context society is not about just Asia, Europe, the Americas or Africa. High context society is typically related to ancient civilization. So the likes of the Egypt, the Greece, India, China, probably France, Italy, right? In a high context society, what's interesting, like for instance, when I go to Japan, so you have to pay attention, not just about just what people say, but many, many other aspects, from body language to, the way people do things, the sequence of which they do things, some of the complex protocol for anyone else who's not Japanese. So this is something that you need to kind of be aware of, and be prepared before you engage with a sort of high context society. Low context society typically would be sort of pretty young civilizations, so the likes of America, maybe Australia. The second dimension, which is interesting, Lina, is this: typically you have the model for a very hierarchical society or very consensual society. So coming from sort of Mediterranean Europe, you would actually call them very consensual society. Right? You would debate, argue, so many times, fight, insult each other until you come to a decision, as opposed to the hierarchical society. What's interesting, though, in my findings is there are unique societies like Japan, which are both hierarchical and consensual. So you need to agree at each layers before you come to a decision. Interestingly, the third point is when you think about decision process, depending on these codes of high context, low context, hierarchical, consensual, you might think that decision process in some society goes pretty fast. Now the question, Leila, is does the implementation is going fast. In some other society, the decision process is pretty slow, but the implementation process is quite fast. So again, there's no right, wrong. Reading the books, understanding, spending some time, even sometimes trying to speak the same different languages, give you a great platform to appreciate, to acknowledge, to anticipate what will be the potential challenges when it comes to business. And I think that's a great opportunity. Back to the topic of today, Lila, what's interesting as you manage the cross-cultural map, I mean, just myself in APJ region, I think I have 37, 38 different countries, very diverse. The very matured country, the very emerging, the very large like India or China, the very small like Hong Kong or Singapore. Right? What it develops, I think, is really also your ability to manage by influence. Right? Because you need to spend a bit more time to understand, to try to crack the code and to have the right level of appreciation of and the values of those different cultures. But I think at the end of the day, Lila, it's amazing and it's very, very energizing.
Yeah, no, I can imagine it's energizing. And I think what I'm hearing from that is showing up with that willingness to be open and to be adaptable to any situation and willing to learn. And as you say, acknowledge and appreciate where other people are coming from, their values, their behaviors, their culture. But it's huge. I think it's not a case of simply you go and be popped into another country and off you go. You got to go at it with an approach of it's the attitude you come with, right? The approach of being open. And just moving on to something I wanted to ask you about, as someone who's been there yourself, what does it take, do you feel, to achieve top talent in an organization?
I would just say one thing, Lila. Learn, invest in your own growth development. Take the time to grow yourself. When some of my team members ask me what to do, well, I say, you tell me what you're going to do. I'm not going to manage you, right? You manage yourself. The best reward, the best thing you can do for yourself, invest in yourself. Invest in yourself. If you ask me, every morning you set up a meeting with yourself. For 30 minutes, you learn something new. Something that you don't know. Culture, innovation, new products, whatever. At worst, you've learned something. At best, you're smarter. You have got a great story to tell your customer, to tell your friends, right? And it's just continue to develop yourself. And I think investing, I would not say enough, but investing, the most precious thing you have, I think, in your life, in your career, is your time. The best return you can get in terms of career is to invest time in your personal development. It could be soft skills, it could be hard skill. Like I said, it could be very classic academic, it could be non-classic, I don't know, dancing, whatever. Learn something. Learn something.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I think, it's the rewards, the personal rewards of continuing investing in yourself. And yes, it takes time, it takes energy, it takes effort, and possibly, investment of money as well. But it's for you as an individual. No one else can take that away from you. So I like that, what you shared there about taking 30 minutes in the morning for yourself, have a meeting with yourself. That's great to grow, to learn, to discover something new. Thomas, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. You have shared so many valuable insights, nuggets, great takeaways for our audience. So I'd like to say thank you. And I hope you've enjoyed the conversation too.
Thank you so much, Lila. I really enjoyed our discussion. And you also gave me some really good feedback about your own career and sort of your own insight. So I really appreciate that the 1 hour we spent together. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'll speak to you soon, Thomas.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please do subscribe to the show so you don't miss any future episodes. And remember to leave a review telling us about your key learnings and what you enjoyed the most. And do share this podcast with your friends and colleagues so we can spread the word on the importance of personal branding when it comes to your career advancement. And also ensure that others can benefit from these invaluable insights from many inspirational leaders. I will be eternally grateful. And if you are looking to earn more money, to get promoted, to secure your next role and advance your career, and would like me to support you personally on that journey to get you there, then reach out to me and let's arrange a chat. Alternatively, why don't you check out my personal branding launchpad, a group training and mentoring program. Finally, if you'd like to connect with me directly, then do reach out and direct message me on LinkedIn. You can find the link as well as any other resources mentioned in the show notes. I'll see you next time.